Welcome once again for joining us in the 3 Minute Therapy podcast. You have as your host me, Dr. Michael Edelstein, and co author of 3 Minute Therapy, and David Ramsey Steele, who's the other co author. Today, we're going to be discussing something that Albert Ellis, in a concept and practice Albert Ellis introduced to me called E prime. And simply what E prime is consists of the English language minus the verb to be. So if you were to speak or write in E prime, you would avoid any use of the forms of to be, such as be, being, been, am, is, isn't, are, aren't, was, wasn't, were, and weren't. And Albert Ellis's idea was that when we use the verb to be, we're setting up an identity. So if I say I am a psychologist, what I literally mean is I equals a psychologist. And as we like to teach in REBT, the only legitimate thing to put after equals I equals is an imperfect human who acts imperfectly. And some of the main problems with the verb to be is that it makes it easy to rate yourself, rate others, and rate life. So if I act poorly, people have a tendency to say I am a failure rather than I failed. I failed does not use the verb to be. So it discourages depression and self rating, and it also discourages anger because people also have a tendency to say, you acted idiotically, therefore you are an idiot, or you are a loser, a common expression. But if you take out the verb to be, you can't say you are a loser. All you can do is talk about the person's action, not the person's identity or the person's self. So it eliminates that kind of self rating. And that's the advantage, one of the main advantages for REBT to use and teach E prime. There are some disadvantages, but David, did you want to say anything at this point?
Well, I think that your very first few sentences embodied a fallacy. You said that if something is if x is y, then x equals y. Uh, Now that's true in arithmetic, of course, or algebra, but it's not true in English. Um, if I say I'm an editor, uh, I'm not saying there is nothing to me except being an editor. That would be a misunderstanding of the use of the verb to be in that sentence. So we start off with a fallacy, and then we proceed from there. And of course, once you start off with a fallacy, you can prove anything.
Yes, I agree that uh, that is a logical fallacy. However, would you agree, David, that a major problem, emotional problem people have is that they identify their total selves with, and the evaluation of their total selves with the evaluation of their behavior. And this is an attempt, and as
Yes.
you're pointing out, an imperfect attempt, but this is an attempt to get around it.
Well, there are languages where you don't say the coffee is on the table. You simply say coffee on table. In other words, there isn't a verb to be, but it means the same thing, and people would take it the same way. So the presence or absence of the verb to be is not crucial. Um, Actually, there is a whole history in philosophy of um, explaining fallacies that arise from the loose use of language. And it so happens that one of the most important of these is the idea that was prevalent in the medieval period of philosophy that that all true statements have a subject predicate form, and that was something that was refuted by Bertrand Russell and others at the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, and nobody in philosophy holds that anymore. And they think that people like Leibniz, who based a lot of their thinking on the notion that uh, everything, all true statements have a subject predicate form, or all false statements for that matter. Those those philosophies, those philosophical systems, like that of Leibniz, um, are basically flawed because of this. So there are all kinds of pitfalls if people can be led into fallacious thinking because they draw wrong implications from the precise structure of the language. The fact that we can describe anything in the universe using language doesn't mean that the universe is essentially linguistic, right? Language is a set of tools for description and argument, and that's all it is. It doesn't. It's not a copy of reality. And if people fall into the fallacy of thinking that there is something profound in, you often hear uh, self-help gurus and other shysters and mountebanks using this kind of argument. They will pick on the precise meaning of a word or a phrase, and they will use it to argue for something absurd.
Yes, but uh, this. So, are you criticizing the basic, one of the basic pillars of REBT, that evaluating your total self based on evaluating the evaluation of your behavior is a problem?
Yes, but you can point out to someone if you suspect that they are um, engaging in fallacious thinking because of that. You can point out that if someone says, I am an editor, that you're not saying that they're nothing but an editor. In other words, I am an editor is not the same as I equals editor.
Yes, but I am. It's my impression when I work with people that when they say I am a bad person and they're depressed, they often mean they are thoroughly bad. They're hopeless cases. They might as well give up, and and that seems to be anecdotally what I experience in working with clients. And when they think, they say things like, this guy is an idiot because he said X, Y, and Z, which is stupid, then that often leads to anger. And when they say this guy acted stupidly, that seems to make a large difference.
Well, I mean, if you find that, then you can point out to people that there are advantages in a different description. But this doesn't mean that you're going to accomplish wonders by expunging the verb to be from the English language.
Yeah, I don't. I agree with you. It has not wonders; it has disadvantages also. But this is one aspect that I find useful in helping people to point that out. That it's much makes much more sense and less likely vulnerable to emotional disturbance, mainly depression or anger, if you just evaluate your act, which doesn't use the verb to be normally. I acted poorly, or I made a mistake, or things like that, rather than using the verb to be, which shows up much more frequently in I am a loser or I am a failure. So that's what I'm getting at with trying to teach them about E prime and some of the problems with using the verb to be that come up in this context.
Yes, well, if you find this works, I mean, that's fine. Um, I would just say if someone says I am a loser, there are different ways of questioning that statement and what it implies.
What would you suggest rather than pointing out that they're making the mistake of evaluating their total self based on the evaluation
Well,
of
I
their
mean, if someone
behavior.
says I'm a loser, I would ask them, has there ever been an episode in your life where you weren't a loser? Did it ever occur that you succeeded at something? Um, or do you think it's possible that some upcoming event you are going to succeed? I'd probe at it from that kind of angle.
Yeah, yeah, I do
I
do
wouldn't I,
that.
w- I wouldn't try to reconstruct their use of grammar and vocabulary.
Yeah, but it's not. It's really the meaning behind that that they uh, put to the use of the words, not the grammar and the vocabulary. And so that's really my point.
Right. But yeah, okay, fine. I mean, I did read at one time Fads and Fallacies in the Name of Science by Martin Gardner, and he has a section in there on general semantics. And this E prime stuff comes out of this cult called general semantics, which was very popular in the 20s and 30s, but has declined a lot since then and doesn't have much following today, although it has a bit of following. Um, there was a book came out, I think about 10 years ago, something like that, called, so I can't even remember. Um, it's called something like Quantum Thinking, and it's based on this general semantics and E prime. And um, when you look at things said by Count Alfred Korzybski, who founded what's called general semantics, it's actually not semantics. It's a self-help cult or a save the world kind of cult. Um, you find that they're all over the place. There's no logical consistency, and there's lots of fallacies. So I would beware of getting involved in some kind of belief system involving uh, the attempt to discourage use of the verb to be.
Yeah, well, I agree. E prime does have using E prime has disadvantages. You're pointing out some. Another one is that Albert Ellis wrote a few books in E prime, and I wrote my PhD dissertation in E prime just for fun. And it does make writing less interesting, more cumbersome in term for the reader and the writer. So I
Right,
think you a more moderate approach would be you can make your writing more interesting by reducing the use of the verb to be, but not
right,
necessarily by eliminating it.
right. The fallacies surrounding the use of to be and things like that. First of all, uh, one of the greatest philosophical works of all time was a little article by Bertrand Russell, um, published, I think it was in 1905. It's called On Denoting, and it was part of a major part of a revolution in philosophy. Um, and it's all about um, what he calls, I think, denoting phrases. So if you want to denote something like um, the present emperor of China, that's a denoting phrase. And nothing corresponds to it in reality, of course, but it is a denoting phrase. If you make a statement like the present emperor of China is bald, um, what's the status of that kind of statement? And so the whole of modern analytic philosophy, which was a revolution accomplished in large part by Bertrand Russell at the very beginning of the 20th century, end of the 19th century, is based on looking suspiciously at these constructions in English involving the verb to be. Another thing that occurs to me is that you sometimes see now the use of the equals sign in rather odd contexts. For example, aliens equal real, that kind of statement. And to me, it's arresting because it's so obviously fallacious. If what you want to say is there really are aliens, you can say that. But to say that aliens equals real is that's implying that the only thing that's that's real is aliens, apart from anything else, because both sides of an equation in mathematics must have the same value. To me, the reason that that is an arresting construction is precisely because it is so obviously fallacious. Another one I've seen is mind equals blown. I mean, surely anybody of average IQ can see that that embodies a fallacy, even though it might effectively um, convey some kind of sense, which is often done by the use of fallacies, which we all recognize in our sober and reflective moments are not logically coherent.
Okay, well, that's the philosophical uh, part of it. And I never studied philosophy, so I bow to your knowledge about that. I was just trying to convey, since this is a podcast on REBT devised by Albert Ellis. These are some of the things that Albert Ellis said about E prime and the pluses and minuses of E prime. It's my understanding it's true that it was devised by a general semanticist, D. David Borland, and he actually spoke and wrote in E prime. And if you're interested, you could go to YouTube and put in his name, D. David Borland, and you'll see I think, a 3 or 5 minute talk of his in E prime, which is kind of interesting. David,
Right.
did you have any last words on this?
Not really. No, I think I've said. Uh, I think I've said all that's worth saying about this topic.
Okay, and and you said that in E prime. I've said all that. Oh no,
Yeah,
you
no,
used
I
E.
use the verb to be a lot. Yeah,
Yes, yes. So
I'm
that
in.
that
I'm into being.
yeah, that makes it false by definition. Well, thanks for watching our podcast and YouTube channel once again. 3 Minute Therapy Podcast. Comment below and give us a like, a thumbs up. Suggest subjects for our future programs. Volunteer if you like. We're always looking for guests. And donate to Patreon to help support our efforts. Subscribe to the 3 Minute Therapy Podcast and uh, read some books by Albert Ellis. And David and I wrote a couple of books. The most prominent one is 3 Minute Therapy. And
And
do your
the sequel to
REBT.
that is Therapy Breakthrough.
Yes, and which is more of a historical examination of the history of psychotherapy and Albert Ellis's breakthrough in psychotherapy, which the title refers to. And we hope to see you next time. Bye.